It's time to talk about tanking and different types of tanking. So I previously made a video where I talk about the different types of tanking. So I'm going to demo some types of tanking as well as some structures. Now these structures can be used to increase the tankiness of a unit. So the first thing we'll talk about is just basic speed tanking. So let's say you have a bunch of enemies, right? And none of these enemies have high enough speed to W. So just by virtue of being fast, you do not get doubled and therefore take much less damage. So that's the first thing that we're going to consider. And then the next thing is something called mitigation tanking. So if we get attacked by all these enemies and we pop Ike and then wait, Ike makes us take half damage, and with the increase in speed we don't get doubled, and so we take half damage not from getting doubled, then we take half damage from taking half damage. So we basically take quarter damage because we're fast and because we have Ike on. Now, certain things will hit through, like chain assists in this case. But looks like some of the enemies don't even want to attack. They don't have enough damage. Alright, so that's mitigation tanking. Now you can combine that with other things too. So for example, if you wanted to stack this with something else, you could use a chain guard plus mitigation tanking. So now the first hit is nullified, especially if it's like a break or something. It also just nullifies the first stack or the first amount of damage, especially if something's like a threat. This can be useful because sometimes even when you're using mitigation tanking, you're still taking huge damage from some source. So now you have mitigation tanking plus nullification tanking. So this first hit is nullified. Now obviously this Flame Lance enemy isn't the biggest threat, but the fact that if it was, we can nullify it. This is definitely useful for late game. You could then tank more things. So if getting hit once was the difference between living or dying, a single chain guard plus mitigation tanking would enable this more effectively. Another way to stack tanking types is by using avoid tanking. So here we have an Ivy with 94 avoid. So a lot of these enemies are going to have a hard time hitting her. So if she just goes in the middle of them and waits, she could die, but we'll see. A lot of these are like magical enemies, so she'll probably kill most of them. But they have low hit rates, and just by virtue of being hard to hit, and by virtue of being fast, in this case being on Lyn, she doesn't get doubled, so she's speed tanking, and she also doesn't get hit frequently. She doesn't get hit often, because she has high avoid. But she has low enough avoid that enemies will go for the attacks. So 1 out of 3 attacks hit her. Because she's much faster than these enemies, she's one-rounding them on enemy phase. So there is some luck to this, obviously, but if you want to remove that luck, there's a way, and I'll show it. There's a way to remove the luck. Alright, so it looks like she just was able to avoid tank all of these. So sometimes avoid tanking works out, sometimes it doesn't, but if you want to make avoid tanking more consistent, there is a way. So just by pushing in a 90 avoid Ivy, she's able to basically clear out this room. She killed everything. Alright. She killed all of them but one. It's pretty effective. Okay, so what else can we do with this? Let's say you want to make avoid tanking more consistent. So I can combine avoid tanking with chain guards, obviously. So if I stick Ivy like here, just have her wait, and then I have a unit chain guard her. Assuming I can tank something if it can hit me, I can pretty much guarantee that she will take less damage because of the chain guard. Now another thing you can do too, to protect your chain guarder, is you can chain guard the chain guard, which seems kind of silly. Alright, so he can get hit by the Flame Lance. Alright, that's not bad. Alright, so now we're combining avoid tanking with chain guard. And the idea here is if you do get hit... Alright, so he went for the Sadal. If you do get hit, you take much less damage. So assuming the avoid tanking fails a few times, like even like once or twice, if as long as you can take one of those hits, if it only fails twice, you can get away with it, essentially. So it can make it more consistent and reliable, so that on average you'll be dodging, but if a hit does go through, like you see she got chain guarded. Now obviously you have to worry about the chain guarder getting hit, so you usually want to make some kind of build where it's hard for the chain guarder to get hit. So you can make like an avoid plus build. You can throw like Micaiah engraving on, for like in this case I could have used Fram. Actually go back. Check this out. Fram actually is perfect for this. So Ivy could go here. Wait. I'm gonna warp her just because her position's slightly off. But she has the avoid tanking thing that I need. I put her on an avoid tile. So you can stack avoid tiles so with passives. Alright, now she's 111 avoid. Alright, 111 avoid. This has like 10% hit rate. This can hit her. But the point of this is knowing that you can stack tanking types and knowing how to play around them is huge. Here we go. I just gotta level up from using Obstruct. That's so silly. Alright, what can hit her now? Alright, so only this can hit her, and it has 121 hit rate. Now the other thing you can do, if your chain guarder gets hit, then they drop the chain guard. So if you have multiple chain guarders, which I recommend, you can chain guard the chain guarder, so that if they attack the chain guarder, it doesn't lose its chain guard, and then it maintains the chain guard on the target. So chain guard, having 2 to 3 chain guarders is good. Yeah, this is exactly why. Now he has low hit. Yeah, she just dodged it anyways, but you can basically ensure the consistency of dodge tanking setups by using bonded shield or chain guard. Now this is assuming the bonded shield is on a unit that doesn't give 100% success rate, so like let's say it's at base 80%, or on Dragon at 90%. So like chain guard or bonded shield plus medium level avoid tanks, not high level, so like things that still get attacked, can be very effective because then enemies have low chance of success. Plus you have the chain guard overlapping the avoid tanking, so that if they do actually hit, you're fine. And enemies tend to prioritize breaking and huge damage first. So chain guarding, like if their hit goes through and it were to break the unit in question, the chain guard can be huge value. You can also do multiple chain guards too, if the setup allows for it. So she's dodge tanking, but if she does get hit, it gets chain guarded now. Sometimes they'll catch like a stray crit through avoid tanking, sometimes there's like an effective weapon that gets through, or a break that gets through that messes up your enemy phasing. Like there's a crit that actually kills her. That's a perfect example. That's actually good that that happened. That's a perfect example of how things can go wrong. Let's look at some mixed tanking hybrids. Alright, so here we have 2 setups. We have an Ike tank, who's going to get hit by 4 enemies that all have pretty high damage, at least for this point in the game, with a chain guard to reduce the number of hits. So I take half damage from being high speed, I take half damage from taking half damage, and then I take 1 less hit, so I'm only getting effectively hit by 3 things. And then of course I have Ivy avoid tanking. She could still get hit, so I have a chain guard to support her, and then everyone else can get ready to dive in afterwards. So here's a real case, a real world use case. So the first hit is nullified. Counterattack. Now some of these might just be 1 range, so I might not need all this tanking, but we'll see. Okay, here's a 2 range. So the chain guard definitely mattered here. Here's the Ivy. She crits. She did dodge, but she had the chain guard there. She could tank it as well. She has high enough defense. So let's do the same thing. The chain guarders are also chain guarding each other, which is kind of nice. Alright, and then what I can do on Marin here. She could go fight that, so that when it attacks her, she kills it. She's on Wolf Knight right now, so her damage isn't that good. Alright, then she should catch a Physic. One thing I could do is have Ivy kill the sword, or at least put damage on it, just to set it up. She still can avoid tank, so there's like a 50-50 chance she gets hit by an archer if her chain guard goes down right away. Alright, they're going after Marin. Alright, so she dodged, or she does not dodge tank that. You can't dodge tank on Ike. Well, technically you can if the enemy's hit rate's low enough. So some more damage, some speed, that definitely helps. Now what could kill her are the chain assists, but I think... Let's see, is this the last thing that can hit her? Yeah, or no, maybe not. Yeah, okay. So... This did work out, eventually. But, you know, it's still pretty tight. But the difference between living and dying... Let me see, that sword guy hitting me. This literally was the difference between living and dying in this position. If this would have hit her, it would have hit her for 12 on Ike. So she would have died. So she survived because of a single chain guard. This is the perfect use case of this like type of play, where you're in a corner, you're using your chain guarders. They're not going after the chain guarders because they want to get a kill and they have like backup chain assist spam. But that was literally the difference between life and death, combining, you know, mitigation tanking, being fast, and the chain guard. Now, the result could have been better, like it could have been on a unit that can one run more consistently, but this is still like middle game, like early middle game. And obviously units like Ivy can one run consistently, but all these other units, you know, Marin needs to be on Mage Knights for her build, so she's going to be lower damage than normal for a while. But yeah, that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this or found this interesting. I just wanted to show some tanking structures. Now, obviously I could have used Bonded Shield here if I wanted to, or after the initial turn, just blew open this enemy formation by attacking with my entire team. But this is an example of holding down a front with a few units on a choke point, specifically using mitigation tanking. But yeah, thanks for checking this out. Peace.